Welcome to What's at Stake, a Penta podcast. I'm your host, Bryan DeAngelis, and today's episode is going to be a little different as we're going to discuss the upcoming coronation of King Charles III. I feel a little honored, I think, given the reign of Queen Elizabeth. There is probably not too many times in my lifetime that I'm going to be able to host a podcast about a coronation. So I'm really excited to do this. As everyone knows, Charles became king last fall when Queen Elizabeth II passed away. But the formal coronation ceremony will be held later this week. And while the British monarchy has been largely apolitical, we wanted to take some time to think about what are the real implications of having a new king. We'll talk about the monarchy's place in post-Brexit Britain, what we can expect from King Charles, and why the new monarch matters both geopolitically and economically. To help us figure all that out, I'm joined by one of my colleagues and good friends, Louise Stewart. She's a Penta Strategy partner based in our London office. Louise joined Penta from the Hume Brophy team, where she was a managing director. And prior to Penta and Hume Brophy, she had a long career working in communications, particularly crisis communications and media training, and over 20 years of experience in broadcast, both TV and radio. So, Louise, thank you so much for joining me, and welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Bryan. Thanks for having me.
Louise, you're sitting in London, so let me just start with maybe the simple question, but set the scene for us. I think we're about 5 days, if I can do my math right, away from the coronation. What is the buzz in London? What's been happening since last September? Tell us what's going on over there.
It's interesting. I don't think, to be honest, there's anything like the sense of excitement or the buzz that there was clearly for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June 2022. That was a huge celebration of her reign, of her monarchy. But as you say, I'm in London today. I was in London yesterday, which was a bank holiday here. And there are parts of London which are festooned with flags. There are lots of Union Jacks out there, lots of bunting. So it does feel like people are getting into the spirit. It feels very late, I have to say. I've had several messages today from friends and neighbours saying, what are you doing this weekend? Have you got plans? Can we do something together? So it feels like people are kind of coming to it, but late in the day, if you like. So yes, perhaps not as pre-planned as it might be. As you say, the coronation takes place on Saturday. It's estimated there will be around 3,000 street parties. The Brits love a street party, by the way. I don't know if you've ever been to one or seen one. But
I have not.
They close off.
Jealous to miss out.
They close off the roads, and that's how we know how many there'll be, because they've had permission from the local authorities to close the roads, and all the neighbours come together, and you have long trestle tables, and people come out and eat traditional, coronation chicken, which was for the Queen's coronation. This time, Charles has chosen coronation quiche. I'm not sure that's going to take off, but that is broad bean and watercress quiche, and that is a nod to his. He likes to eat as vegetarian several days of the week because he's very climate conscious, as we know. So that is the recipe that has gone out to the nation. But the coronation takes place on Saturday, which is when it officially happens at Westminster Abbey and all the dignitaries. But then across the weekend, so we have another holiday Monday, bank holiday on the Monday. So the street parties will take place on the Sunday and Monday, and that's when people are expected to celebrate. And it does provide a huge boost to the economy because it's estimated that it will be £120 million boost to the hospitality industry. In terms of people having the Sunday off, knowing they don't have to work on Monday, going out, celebrating, etc. People watching it on big screens across the country and coming together. So that's a much needed boost. You know, we've been having a cost of living crisis here in the UK, and hospitality hasn't really recovered since the COVID pandemic. So many people will welcome that.
And I imagine just like the Jubilee, which you mentioned, and the royal weddings that we've seen in past years, I'm assuming the crown spared no expense. The pomp and circumstance for a coronation will be what we maybe have come to expect from other royal events.
Well, it will be slimmed down. It won't be quite as much of a spectacle. It will still be, when I say slimmed down, we're still going to have hundreds of dignitaries from across the globe. We'll have royal family coming from across the globe. We know the first one to respond was from Monaco. So we'll have lots of European royal family there. But Charles has committed to having a slimmed down sort of monarchy, so there will be fewer royals there, so there won't be as many of them. There was a little outcry in the British press, but one of the last two surviving bridesmaids of his mother, the Queen, has not been invited, but she's been at the last two coronations, so this would have been a hat trick for her. So that's disappointing for some. But what we will see is there's going to be around 850 invitees from local communities and from charity sector who do a lot of work perhaps for the Prince's Trust and other charitable organisations. So they'll be recognised by being invited. So he wants it to be, I think, a broader celebration and not just the dignitaries. So politicians here in the UK, they've had to go into a ballot to be drawn out. So they're not all guaranteed to go. There's only a few of them going. And we know from across the globe, Joe Biden is not coming, but his wife Jill will be in attendance. So there will be still a really impressive cast list, if you like, but it will be a more slimmed down celebration than we would have seen perhaps for the Queen's coronation, and we've seen, as you state, at royal weddings, etc.
Interesting. Well, let's dive into what this all means today in 2023. As we kind of alluded to in the intro, there's been a lot of change for the United Kingdom in recent years. Obviously, what I'm talking about there is Brexit. How do you see King Charles, put his mark on a new post-Brexit period for Britain?
I think the interesting thing is, Bryan, that the royal family have always tried to remain apolitical, and the Queen was very much in that mould of never giving her opinion. She's had audiences every week with every prime minister that served under her, and I think there were 10 in total in her lifetime, but you never really knew where she stood politically. However, just a matter of months, less than 6 months into his reign, King Charles did find himself at the centre of a Brexit political storm in February when he was asked to meet the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. And that was to try and strike this deal with Northern Ireland, the Windsor framework as it became. And he did meet her, but it was seen as a sort of crude attempt to sort of, Eurosceptic politicians were very unhappy about it. The palace defended the decision, saying they were pleased to meet any world leader while they were visiting Britain, and stressed it was the government's advice that he should do so. But I think it was quite a sharp lesson for him that actually you stray into politics at your own peril, and something that seems quite straightforward and, you're entertaining a world leader can become very political. So I think he will try and steer away from that, but there is huge soft power that the royal family hold, and that's something that he and Camilla will want to use to the UK's benefit.
I did want to ask about that. When you think about that soft power, how do you envision either Charles with the support of Parliament and the Prime Minister, or maybe it's even at the encouragement, as you said, of the Prime Minister, as we saw in February, to kind of use that soft power of the throne to help really advance some of Britain's geopolitical goals?
I think what we'll see a lot more of, Bryan, is probably the king and the new queen, as she will be, Camilla, travelling abroad, because Queen Elizabeth, due to age, her last trip abroad was in 2015 when she went to Malta, which was a place very dear to her because her and Prince Philip spent their honeymoon there and many years there when he was in the Navy. But because of her age, she had stopped travelling abroad. So that clearly limits her ability to spread sort of soft power around the globe. I think what we will see is there will be maybe a push to do more visits in Europe and elsewhere once the coronation has passed. And I think that will help in terms of Britain's sort of wider aims. I think we saw it. He understands the importance of being seen very clearly, and when his mother died, I mean, it was extraordinary to watch, actually. I mean, he was clearly grieving. His mother had just passed, and he went out on this tour of the UK, which would have probably been too much for men half his age. He literally, when his mother died, he was in Scotland. He travelled from Scotland back to England. He went to Northern Ireland. He went to Wales. And the clear message was, I'm a monarch for the whole of the United Kingdom. And there's been all the threats to the United Kingdom over the years, with greater calls for devolution, with calls for Scotland to break away, etc. And he was clearly saying, no, I am a monarch for the whole of the United Kingdom. And he did that very visually. We saw him also wanting to go to France. That had to be cancelled because of troubles in France due to strikes. I mean, at the time when he was about to go, and actually President Macron had to call that off because they would have been surrounded by rubbish on the streets. Right. It would have been a bit of a throwback to the French, of the times of the French Revolution. So it would not have been a great look. But we saw him wanting to get out there and meet European leaders, and I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah, and I skipped over this point, but he's not a young man, so that'll certainly be an endeavor for him. But I've noticed that myself just in reading the press and following along, that he seems eager to get out there. I have to ask the communications, and I don't want to go too far into the kind of the tabloids here, but you and I both, our background is strategic communications, is crisis communications. We help clients think about their reputation and their public profiles. If you're thinking about King Charles and the royal family right now, they've had their fair share. They're going to be very much in the spotlight, whether we go all the way back to Princess Di or more recently with his son, Harry. What's your kind of top priority if you're advising him right now as he moves into even a brighter spotlight?
I think since his mother died, I think Charles has handled the press very deftly. I think whoever is advising him, they're doing a good job. I think his top priority is to show that the royal family isn't detached from normal life, everyday life. He's been aware of this for a long time. I mean, there's a documentary here in the UK at the moment which shows him talking about that when he was in his 20s. So this has always been his vision, that it wouldn't be the sort of, for want of a better expression, hangers on, this huge royal family all paid for by the state, etc. So it has been slimmed down, and we've seen that in recent years. And you see only the most senior royals on the balcony at the events. So the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, Platinum Jubilee, royal weddings, only the more senior royals are there. But he's going to continue that. So the fact is there will be huge pomp and circumstance at the coronation on Saturday, but it will not be as big as it was. There will be fewer of the dignitaries, etc., we've seen in the past. So I think he's got that right. He's come to the throne at the time of, and I've already alluded to this, a huge cost of living crisis in the UK.
Right.
We had a whole winter of people talking about families having to make the choice between heating and eating, because fuel prices have gone up so much. And he's acutely aware of that, I think. So to sort of go against that and show huge extravagance just now would seem quite vulgar, I think. So I think he's handling that well. I think the main controversy, if you like, the thing that's focused on in the tabloids here is the relationship with his youngest son, who we know has moved to California, Harry. And he hadn't replied. Nobody seemed to know, even within the very inner sanctum of the royal family, whether he was going to attend the coronation or not. He has now confirmed he will be there. His wife, Meghan, won't be. She's staying in Montecito, and it's his son's birthday. So I think Harry is literally doing a flying visit. He's going to be in town, do the coronation, and then leave within a couple of hours, which is what he did for his grandmother's funeral. He came, he was in, he was out. I think that's what people will be focusing on in the UK. I know perhaps it doesn't have broader significance. People here feel very saddened by that. They'll be looking at that to see if there's any rapprochement between the two brothers, etc. But I think I would say, in terms of a strategy, in terms of comms, stakeholders, I think they're handling it quite well. They've risen above. They've never said they put the invite out to Harry and Meghan. It was their decision for her not to go. Right. So it's sort of, if you want to invoke the words of Michelle Obama, I think Prince Charles is taking the when they go low, we go high. He's sort of rising above it, putting out the invitation, hoping they'll attend. And so I think he's done that well. In terms of who the key stakeholders are, if you want to look at it in that respect, sure. It's actually the public, isn't it? The number one stakeholder for this event it's not the dignitaries, fantastic if the royal families from around the world come and, state leaders come, that's fantastic. But actually, for the monarchy to survive and thrive, they have to have the support of the public. If the great British public decides they no longer back Prince Charles, and many of them have in polls have sort of said, they backed the Queen, but not her son, etc. So he's going out there. It's a charm offensive where he needs to get the public behind him. And we don't call them a stakeholder at Penta. They're not part of our four corners. But if you look at the media, they have an absolutely pivotal role to play in this. They are the sort of conduit, if you like, because... Right. If you look at the royal family over the many, many years we've been looking at them, their popularity waxes and wanes with the press. So there was the torrid time after Princess Diana died, when the royal family seemed to be in a very difficult place. There was the, as she referred to it, the annus horribilis, when Windsor Castle went on fire and the Queen had a dreadful time and all her children seemed to be getting divorced. But she seemed to come through it all. But the press is a lens through which the royal family are seen. So in this case, I think they do have to. And what does that mean? You say, well, for them, there has got to be a level of cooperation with the public. So we saw it was Charlotte's 8th birthday yesterday. And what's happened now, and we've become used to, is her own mother. They don't get a royal photographer in like they would have in past years, but her mother, the Princess of Wales, Kate, took the picture and releases it to the press. They seem to understand, in a way that Harry and Meghan did not, that it's a two-way deal here.
How to feed the press, right.
Yeah, we've got to work with the media and they will then work with us. So if you look at William and Kate's family, they have never been stalked. They have never been, the paparazzi tracking them down, because they do it's George's birthday or Charlotte's birthday. It's their first day at school and they feed the press that way. So I think he and his staff and the senior royals are very aware of the symbiotic nature.
It's a really good point, and it reminds me, but please correct me if I'm wrong, if I have the mistaken interpretation on the other side of the pond, but Charles, it seemed to me, as Prince, did a fairly good job with that too, where he didn't get overly political in recent years, but he did start to own a few issues, whether it was some of the charities you talked about, or I even think of he had quite a loud voice around climate change. And that was a way probably to feed the media, as you say, to kind of brandish a bit of a reputation. I imagine now he's got to take a big step back on a lot of that. Maybe not give up what he genuinely believes in or cares about, but now with the crown, there's a different significance that comes with that. Am I right in that kind of reading of things?
Absolutely. You're spot on. And, Charles has had many pet projects. And listen, he's had a long apprenticeship, hasn't he?
Yes,
he's been waiting for this job for a long, long time. But he's been very outspoken on environmental issues for more than 50 years. And unlike his mother, because she never did, he has lobbied politicians for his favoured environmental policies. They were called the sort of spider letters, because his handwriting is so tiny and spindly that he used to write to them and they were barely legible. But he has been clear that when he became monarch, he said he wouldn't lobby on those passion projects. I don't think we'll see him giving up on climate change. The great area of, I read a funny anecdote this morning when I was reading the paper on the train coming into work, and the royal chef was saying that Prince Philip turned up in the kitchen once and he saw this huge hamper, and this is probably 20 years ago, and he said, "Excellent, is that hamper from Harrods," which is a very fancy store here in London? Yes. And the chef said, "No, it's full of organic goods from Prince Charles." He said, "Oh, bloody organic products," so it's kind of like Charles was down this path long before anyone else, long before health food stores popped up everywhere. Charles was on this track. The other one that's a great passion for him is architecture. Mm-hmm. And he has built villages in the UK. He continues to do so. He's very concerned about the lack of sustainable housing and wants that to be something he concentrates on. And when that might seem unusual, but if you look back to his ancestors, Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, right. If you look around London, so much of the architecture, I was at the Victoria and Albert Museum yesterday, it was built by Prince Albert. So, the royals do have this, they leave their mark, their legacy, if you like, in this way. And the other thing he will leave as a huge legacy is his charitable works. Yes. And he set up the Prince's Trust, which has just changed so many young people's lives for the good. In the way, I suppose, the Duke of Edinburgh Award is something that really harnesses young people and gets them to focus, and it supports young people's growth and development. So I think, these are things he will remain passionate about. I think we will see the younger royals. Prince William particularly has taken up the climate change mantle and launched the Earthshot Prize, etc. So he may not be able to lobby government in as direct a way as he has in the past, but I don't think he's going to stop these issues being top of mind during his time as monarch. And
it's a good point. I wonder how much of it does maybe get handed down or just even taken over by William and maybe even
exactly. I think William will be taking over at the Prince's Trust, etc. Because there is a huge amount of work from monarch. People might think it's largely ceremonial. It's not. And actually, right until her death, the Queen was looking at her red boxes from Parliament every single day. There's not a day goes by where they just say, I'm referring to yesterday being a bank holiday. She would still have had red boxes from the ministers that she's got to go through and give royal assent. It's a huge step up. And therefore, some of these other passion projects will have to take a back seat, but I think other royals will take them up.
Interesting. Yeah. Allow me to maybe flip the script a little bit. You mentioned legacy, and one of the things I've been thinking about and reading about is obviously the monarchy as a unfortunate legacy too around colonialism, around slavery. And in recent years, we've seen a little more voice around some of the Commonwealth countries expressing an interest in even more of an independence and breaking away from the crown. I think a lot of folks, but correct me if I'm wrong, thought that they were holding on while Queen Elizabeth was alive, and maybe now there might be more movement around that. Do you see that as I guess true and a challenge for Charles, or is that something he might lean into to kind of keep the Commonwealth together?
I think you're right, and we've seen on recent visits by King Charles, there have been anti-monarchy protesters making their presence felt quite noisily, alongside those showing support for him. Also, I mean, he went to York and he had eggs thrown at him. We would never have seen that happen to Queen Elizabeth. It just would not have happened. But he did not miss a beat. He kind of, carried on walking, talking to the crowds. He seemed very kind of sanguine about it. The anti-monarchists, though, they have acknowledged they would have been reluctant to protest in that way when Queen Elizabeth was still alive. So I think now it's perhaps sort of gloves are off. We know when it comes to the Commonwealth countries, some of them have already cut ties with the monarchy. Some Caribbean nations are putting together plans to break away. Antigua and Barbuda, the Prime Minister there, said he plans to hold a referendum on separating from the monarchy within the next few years. So there is a movement. But I think that's why my instinct will be we will see more travel by Charles and Camilla in the coming years. We'll see more travel by the younger royals, are very popular overseas, William and Kate, in the way that, his father Charles and Diana were, and perhaps just trying to strengthen those ties and show that they are aware of the past, but also modernizing. And we've heard them making apologies about some of the links to the slave trade that there were in the past, etc. So there is an acknowledgement and there is a wanting to move forward and show that the royal family is modernizing.
Interesting. Let me wrap up with maybe two final questions on the popularity point you just raised too. I mean, obviously the crown generates millions of dollars in tourism. And I was just there, as you know, 2-3 weeks ago. We did all of the royal stops with my family. Do you see that continuing under Charles? Will it take a hit? Was that more of a Queen Elizabeth thing, or do you see that continuing?
I think that will continue. I think it's estimated, I have the figures here, that the annual contribution to the UK economy from the monarchy is £1.76 billion a year.
So not
which
millions,
is huge.
Billions.
Billions. And for the taxpayer, the annual cost, anti-monarchists who complain about what they cost us, the annual cost per head is roughly, it's 1 pence a day.
Wow.
So it's
big contrast,
£4. A year or something. It is very good value for money, if you like. I think what we will see is more. So, for instance, their beloved estate in Scotland, Balmoral, which is very close to my heart because it's from along the road from where I was brought up, really. But that's always been a place where Charles has found sort of sanctuary, and where he was when his mother died. That's where she was when she died. He has plans to open that up more to the public. That's never really been open to the public in the same way that we see Buckingham Palace, etc. Wow. So I think they do realise that there's a bit of they've got to walk this tightrope, haven't they? Which so many companies do when we're advising companies, that you've got to be visible, but almost not too visible. You can't be out there everywhere all the time. You've got to, and it's walking that tightrope. And I think they recognize that. So people want to have access, but you also still have to have a bit of mystique about the monarchy. So I think that's a line that they will want to walk. But I think, seriously, I think you've been here, you walk around London, and in a way, I don't know how you felt it, but it's like whenever I've been to New York, I feel like I've, in certain parts of New York, arrived on a sort of film set. And that's how you feel Buckingham Palace, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. You do. You have stepped back in time in some places, but also there's a future to it that's very exciting as well. Especially
at the moment. I mean, every night they're out practicing the Royal Guards, so the horses are out in the morning and then late at night, and you see the coaches delivering the mail and things like that. So I think there will still be quite a firm attraction for people wanting to come here and see, because it's this huge palace in the middle of central London.
Right. Right. It was quite the spot for us, for sure. Maybe that's a good segue into my final question. So will those of us who will tune in on Saturday or pick up the Sunday paper, I do think just the state of today's media, there will be a lot of focus on the pomp and circumstance, the who was there, who wasn't there, our tabloids, our Today Show, those are the folks that I think will get really obsessed with it on the U.S. side of the media. What should folks here really be paying attention to, maybe not just Saturday, but in the months ahead, to understand kind of where Charles is going to take his reign?
I think on Saturday, when I'm saying it's going to be a slimmed down service, it's still going to be a real spectacle. It's going to be led by the Archbishop of Canterbury. There'll be huge pomp and ceremony. There are going to be 100 heads of state attending. Also, we know President Biden won't be there. There'll be royal families from across Europe in attendance. There'll be this diverse audience of charity workers, community representatives, those who played their part during COVID, supporting others, etc. There will be an intense media sort of focus on Prince Harry, where he sits. Does he communicate with his brother? We saw that during Prince Philip's funeral. There'll be a big focus on the younger royals. I mean, this country adores Prince William and Kate's children, who seem to, have that mix of being brought up in an environment where they are royal, but they sort of seem to have quite a nice relationship with their parents. They're not sort of stuffy in the way that Charles would have been when he was grown up.
Sure.
And people enjoy seeing that. So I think that will be what to look out for on the day. I think going forward, my suggestion would be to look out where they decide to visit first, or which dignitaries are invited here first. We know President Biden said he can't make it here, but he'd like to come for a state visit. When will that happen? Will it happen? Will that sort of entente cordiale between the UK and France be strengthened? Will the sort of special relationship between the UK and US be strengthened? These are the things I'll be looking out for.
Great. Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on that as well. Louise, thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
To all our listeners, I hope you enjoy this really special episode given the coronation of what's at stake this week. I'm your host, Bryan DeAngelis. As always, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for new episodes of What's at Stake, as well as the Macrocast, subscribe to our Penta podcast channel and follow us at PentaGRP on Twitter. Everyone enjoy the coronation.